It's not been the first time. I've had somebody say to me, "Yeah, Frank, it's great to save a whole bunch of money, but how do you protect your wealth?" Today, I'm going to be talking about a bunch of strategies to do just that. Hey, good day, guys and girls. This is Frank Thomas from Wealth Generation Strategies, and today I'm going to be talking about how do you protect your wealth. Now, this is a really important topic because it's not easy to save and collect wealth. So you got to protect it any way possible. Matter of fact, I have 7 strategies plus a bonus, which you don't want to miss, that talks about ways you can protect your wealth. So let's get started right away because this is going to be a good one. First of all, work with a retirement advisor. Regardless of whether you're 20 or 60, you should actually take a little bit of time and talk to a retirement advisor. Now, you don't need to go to somebody who's licensed and pay them thousands of dollars. You could talk to somebody who's already walked this walk or somebody who has more knowledge than you. I have a lot of young people come to me and say, "Well, Frank, how do I get prepared for retirement one day? I'm a long ways away from it, but I still want to start getting prepared today." So they can advise you. And if you do go to somebody who is a fully licensed and certified retirement advisor, they normally will have software that will help you stress test your retirement plan. So let's say you decide you're going to save $500,000 or you have. How will it last? What can you do to make it last longer? Believe it or not, it can make a sizable difference into retirement. I truly believe when I'm ready to retire in 4 years here, I'm going to be sitting down again and talking to a retirement advisor and get them to help me map out the next 20 plus years of my life. So just remember, you are planning for 20 years or more, so don't forget that. That's a really important point to make. You don't want to get at 2 or 3 years into retirement and discover that you ran out of money. I've seen it happen time and time again. And especially as a younger person, it sucks because I've retired 2 times already in my life. And I ran out of money both times. It's because I wasn't handling my money. I hadn't talked to a retirement advisor on how to make that money stretch as long as possible. And I wasn't really super wise with it. So you need to get lots of knowledge. So that's my number 1 tip. Let's get into the second strategy here. Here is a place where a lot of people make a mistake. And point number 2 is talking about diversification, because I really believe diversification is king. Regardless of where your investments are going to be, you need to make sure that you're diversified. And the best diversification is between different types of money markets. Stock market, property ownership, right? Bank products like treasury bonds or the such. So you need to make sure that you diversify. Now, how I diversify right now is I use the stock market as my primary investment vehicle. You can't help but see the returns you get over the long term of the stock market, and I've come to truly believe in good dividend stocks as well as good dividend ETFs, exchange traded funds. And the way you protect yourself is to get into different markets, different places, different countries. For example, I have stocks as well as ETFs in the States as well as Canada. And I have some international ones as well. But I just don't invest into one thing. I invest into multiple different market categories. I have insurance. I have communication. I have real estate trusts. I have Coca-Cola, for crying out loud. I love Coca-Cola. I think it's a great stock. But I'm very, very diversified. And I have found that has really helped me against any severe losses, because you'll find that some stocks will go up when other ones will go down. I find that I have some Manulife stocks, and they always go up when the market is tanking, and they always tank when the market's going up. And I've never quite figured that one out, but that's the way it is. Maybe people get more vested into insurance products when everything else looks a little shaky. So make sure you diversify your portfolio. Not diversifying, even if you're doing property ownership, it could be you buy lots of little green houses like a monopoly, and they call it buying a lot of doors. And that might be the way you diversify there. Or maybe you diversify into different businesses. You can buy a laundromat and then a car wash. I was actually listening to a fellow who, what he had done, he was a plumber, and he had built his own plumbing business, and he took all the profits and bought a locksmith business that was already successful. Employed the people to get it running, keep it running, and then he opened up another business, which was another trade. And he's continued to do that, and he's got 5 or 6 different types of trades in different businesses, all paying him a little bit every day. So he's diversified himself by being in multiple different segments of the actual marketplace when it comes to customer needs. Okay, so be sure to use diversification. It will protect your portfolio. You might think it's going to dilute your portfolio, but it won't. It'll actually protect it in the long run. And I've seen that time and time again. Strategy number 3, find ways to keep and not sell. What I'm getting at here is if the market goes down, selling can become very expensive. And it could be the stock market, could be a business, could be property. Yeah, properties do go down. I've seen it happen. We were in our previous house and we had a huge jump in prices of houses, and I actually had somebody come and offer me $750,000 for my house. I wasn't as skilled and as prepared as I should have been, and I turned it down. I shouldn't have turned it down because I'll tell you something, a year later, that house was worth $400,000 again. There's just a bump in the market. So properties go up, properties go down. And I've seen it happen now probably 3 or 4 times in my life. So I always try to catch when the market is going up, the house we're in right now, I knew that it was a growth market. I knew that there was change of use happening here. And I'm not going to get too detailed into change of use. What it basically is if you see a particular area having a change of use, in other words, a new highway goes in, or a new set of services, or they take out a railway track or something like that, the change of use of that area, it will usually increase or decrease the value of property. Where I bought, I could see a huge potential for increase, and we've seen it. We've been here, we just hit 4 years, and we've watched our house get pretty darn close to twice its value in 4 years. You want to find ways to make sure that you keep your money in and not take it out. You don't want to be in a position where you need to sell your assets to survive into your retirement, whether you're 50 or 75. Because selling could be expensive. You want to make sure that you find ways to make it that you can take out of your retirement fund, and it could be with properties, you're just taking the rent money and that's what you're living off of, and you're not selling any properties. Another way could be you take mortgages out or against your properties and you live off of that, and you basically hold on to that mortgage until you die. Another way in the stock market is to use anything that has a dividend. Dividend items like stocks or ETFs allow you to glean a profit without selling the underlying asset. I really, really like that. I've always found that whenever you're selling and you're getting rid, you're dropping the value of your overall asset pool. You want to avoid that with all costs. Number 4 is actually a really important strategy, and you got to protect your wealth from you. Yeah, from you. You need to make sure that you have a reasonable budget, and you need to keep to it. You want to avoid buying expensive toys when you have money in the bank. It's really easy to get complacent and go spend a couple $100, a couple $1,000 on something that you don't really need, or you're not going to really use. And what you're doing is you're drawing down your asset base again. So when you're in trying to protect it, you got to protect your wealth from yourself. You always have to consider capital preservation over everything else. You want to make sure you protect that capital. That capital is there to keep you through the long term, not the short term. Oh, I love to get that new gadget or that new car or that new whatever. You want to make sure that you protect your wealth from yourself, and it could be just a creeping budget too. You can nickel and dime yourself to death. I've done it. I bought the t-shirt and the golf clubs and everything else that goes with it. So Yeah, you don't want to do that. So protect the wealth from yourself. Number 5 is you need to learn how to protect your wealth from the tax man. The tax man can gobble up easily half of your wealth before you ever get a chance to spend it. So but the nice thing is there is a lot of legal ways to minimize taxes on investments. I know in Canada we have an RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, and it allows you to put pre-tax money in it. You do pay tax like it's normal income tax coming out, but you're normally in a lower tax bracket when you go into retirement. Your spending should not be as high. So you're technically reducing the amount of taxes you pay on that money. And I've actually done that, and it does work. The second way is in Canada, again, we have something called a TFSA. It's a tax-free savings account. Now you put post-taxed money, in other words, your net income into it, but any gains in that account are tax exempt. So if you're slowly but surely gobbling up nice properties or nice dividend stocks in your TFSA, anything you make that's a profit in your TFSA is tax exempt, and that can make a huge difference down the road. So you want to make sure you maximize those accounts as much as possible. And I know other countries have like accounts, so be sure to check what your local laws and governmental permissions are for this sort of thing. So you do want to always make sure you protect your wealth from the tax man. As a side note, before I jump on to the next point, 2 things here. First of all, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to give it a like. And if you're really enjoying it, subscribe, and you'll know the next time I drop a video. But the second thing is in that last point I was talking about, if you have enough wealth and it warrants it, you should look into creating what's called a legal trust entity and wrapping your wealth into that. This is way beyond this video, so I'd recommend you go talk to a legal representative. But there's, again, ways to create what you would be like almost like a TFSA, but in a corporation. And I know you can do this in the States too, for sure. And what happens is, it's just like a TFSA in Canada, but you can put a heck of a lot more money into it. So something that's worthwhile looking into if you have the asset base to warrant it, because it will be expensive to set up initially, but it could save you in spades what you paid for it in the long run. Point number 6, make plans for your surviving members. Now, you would say, like, how does this fit into this list of different strategies? You always got to think, if you are married or you have a significant other and that other person is not a money person, and let's say you're the money person. If you're watching this video, you're probably the money person, and the person who's looking at their phone or reading a book is not the money person. That could be your significant other. So you need to put in place a plan if they live longer than you. In my case, that's a pretty high likelihood. So I'm already building contingency plans for my wife that she can be good, she can be okay, as well as it helps to retain and protect her money. She has a very generous heart, and I can see her giving money away to the children, to grandchildren, things like that, and she doesn't realize that it could have a long-term impact to her surviving or out-surviving her money. And I would not like to see that. I think it's terrible when you see a grandmother who has to eat cat food and live in common housing or something like that because they can't afford anything because all they get is a small pension from the government. That's terrible. And I see it happen all the time, and I want to avoid that for my wife. So make sure you think about this, and you think about making sure that whatever you put together is going to survive the longest living person in a relationship. So make plans for your surviving members. Very important. Point number 7, protect your wealth from inflation. And this can be a big one. This is one that kind of just eats away at your funds and you don't even realize it. Because I was doing some studies and I discovered that the cost of living is rising. And I kind of thought, it's only about 2% per year. In Canada, the cost of living has risen over the last 50 years by 3.8% per year on average. I was shocked when I looked that up. That's like almost 4%. So every year, your dollar, if you had $1 today and you held on to it for 1 year, it's really only worth about 96 cents next year. And in a year, it's only going to be worth about 92 cents. And in a year, it's going to be worth maybe 89 cents. Can you see what's happening here? Even though you still got that dollar, its buying power has significantly reduced because of the rising cost of living. In the States, to give a simulation or to give a comparison, in the States over the past 100 years, the rate of cost of living has been about 3.3%. So it's still sizable. Now, if you think about it, if you're withdrawing 5% a year and inflation could be up to 4%, then you need to make a plan that gets a return rate of at least 9%. Now, the S&P 500 has had an average return rate in the past 50 years when dividends are reinvested, so no money's taken out, at around 11.8%. And when it's adjusted for inflation, it's about 7.8%. So we've adjusted for that inflation factor. So at 7.8%, you're still going to be okay if you start pulling it at 5%. And I realize that my numbers are a little skew here because this is talking about when dividends are reinvested. So we have to consider the fact when they're not reinvested. I've always said when you build your plan, you want to make sure that you never deplete it. And that brings me to my bonus. Always consider that there's two main scenarios when it comes to wealth. Either you will have a depleting asset base or a non-depleting asset base. A depleting asset base will run out of funds one day in the future. Non-depleting will become an intergenerational wealth reservoir. In other words, it won't run out. That's what you're shooting for. You want to make sure that whatever you build, it's something that will outlive you, outlive your significant other, and become a wealth base for your children in the future. There's many people who have been very successful at this, and even the average Joe can do this and be very successful. What a blessing it would be if you could one day have your children receive a check for $500,000 each that they can put in and pay for their children's education, or it's the start of their retirement fund for one day, or whatever. That's such a blessing. I know I was blessed when my father passed away and received a little bit of money, and it was wonderful. It was really, really nice. So those are my big points here. I hope you get something from them. But you might be asking yourself, well, how do I actually make as much as possible to make all this worthwhile? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I just made a video and it's actually been wildly successful on YouTube, and it's called How to Make as Much Money as Possible. So make sure you check that out. Should be on the screen right now. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This is Frank Thomas. Hey, let's get rich together. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.